Hi, welcome to Jules FM. I'm Jules. And in today's episode, I wanted to talk about my takeaways from my conversation with Vithyaa. If you haven't listened to the episodes, go back and do, because Vithyaa is an incredible woman who has forged her own pathway despite massive obstacles from her family and culture. And she has just created the world's first fire investigation company and broken new ground in so many different areas. But I guess the one thing that I think was most fascinating to me was that she still calls herself unemployed. Now, this is a woman who has, as I said, built the first fire investigation company of its kind in the world, owned by a woman of colour. She started a national community for South Asian women. She's been written about. She's spoken at events. She's a motivational speaker. She's changed industry practice around domestic violence cases. And she still calls herself unemployed. And I think it's because no one tells her what to do anymore. She controls her own time. And I love that so much. So today, I also wanted to share 3 things from my conversation. Not just that I found interesting like that, but things that I think I'm going to try, or definitely some of them I'm going to try and put into practice myself, because I just think they help us grow and make us better. Anyway, the first takeaway that I had was that Vithyaa described herself as a rebel. She rebelled against what the expectations were from her family and culture, as I said, and that was the most aligned thing she could have done. So she grew up with a very specific picture of success. So earn a lot of money, hold a job that's highly regarded, respectable, like a lawyer, a doctor, or any of those. Buy the things that you want, have all the nice trimmings, follow the expected path. And her twin, which was quite ironic, did exactly that. But Vithyaa didn't. She rebelled. And these are her own words. She followed her gut, though, instead of the plan. And she said it plainly. It was the best thing she ever did. What gets me, though, is what rebellion actually looked like for her. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was choosing the course that most resonated, that she found most interesting, and trusting that path. And for her, it was forensic science because, she just said it looked really interesting. It got her attention and she was really engaged in it. It was loving a single unit on fire investigation enough to build a career out of it, while her parents quietly worried about what kind of job that even was. But for her, enjoyment mattered more to her than the money or the reputation or the image. And that's it. That was a rebellion. And I think I've spent a lot of my life assuming rebellion had to look like this massive show or a big leap. But Vithyaa's version was smaller and quieter, but it changed everything. So I want to start asking myself more often, is the choice actually mine or is this the expected one? And look, I already know the answer. There was a lot of decisions I made in my life that were very much the expected decisions. They weren't necessarily true to what I wanted to do. And that doesn't mean now that I have to throw everything away. It just means I'm just going to try and be a bit more conscious about the decisions I make and checking whether they're the old program or whether they're the new program, which is Julia 2.0, the one that actually says, all right, is this truly aligned and does this feel right? The second takeaway I have was that boundaries don't need to be announced. And I love this one in particular. I've had my challenges with family as well, like V has, and definitely feel like I need to have some boundaries in place to protect myself and my family, my immediate family, from other members. But I've always kind of felt that I needed to, if that was going to be the case and I was going to have boundaries, that I needed to tell the other family members why I was being distant or what their actions were or how their actions were affecting me. Vithyaa is not on speaking terms with her dad, and he doesn't really know what she does. And she doesn't get the support from him that she needed. And at some point, she made a choice and she put a boundary in place, which I think is such a brave and a sensible thing to do. But here's the part I wasn't expecting, is that she said the other person, in particular her dad in this case, doesn't even know that the boundary's there. which is kind of, I didn't even know that was an option, but of course it is. You don't have to explain it. You don't have to have the big confrontation. You can just stop absorbing what isn't serving you or what's not kind. Nod, smile, and say, I hear you, and quietly just not take it in. It seems so simple and so basic, but again, I guess that comes down to our conditioning. And for me, well, my conditioning is that I have this sense of obligation that family is family, and if things aren't working, you kind of just suck it up and get on with it, and that's just what it is. You can't choose your family, all those sayings, but it doesn't always serve me, and it hasn't always been what's best for my family or me. So I think it's a really smart move. And like I said, I've always thought that boundaries had to be declared. Say it out loud, explain to them why this is not happening, and all that does is invites a conversation or arguments that are not going to end well for anyone, and not much really changes. So why involve them? Why not just be clear with what my boundaries are and assert those in a way that I need to? And it can be really quietly. The third takeaway I have is keeping a record of my own evidence and my own wins. Now, I've spoken about this before, and I'm sure previous guests have also mentioned this, but done it in different ways. But I really loved that Vithyaa was really conscious and aware of making sure that she notes down every small win, like every minor celebration, every achievement, didn't matter how quiet. And she does this on her phone. She keeps a little note. So it's really handy. It's accessible at all times. She can just get it out and make a little note of it. And she goes back to that when she's having self-doubts, which I can honestly relate to, happens regularly. And sometimes then in those moments, it's good to go back and think, no, but hang on, this is done. But you do forget. You forget all the little wins along the way. And so if they were written down, it would be really easy and so much quicker and shortcut all that stress and worry to go, oh, there it is. Oh, yes, I do remember now. Yes, this is right. Yes, I have made these wins. Yes, I am making progress. I think a lot of people go through doubts, especially when they're building something new and it's not proven, or if they have a background where they've been trained to not necessarily believe they're enough, or that they've had different pressures. Who knows? For a range of different reasons, so many people have doubts. And I think when those self-doubts creep in, or the imposter syndrome, or whatever it may be, to have that written down somewhere that you can look at really quickly to kind of help before you get into that downward spiral of stress and worry and self-doubt. And it just would be really reassuring. And she reads her own list back to herself all the time, especially in those moments. And it's evidence. It's proof she can point to when her own mind tries to convince her otherwise. And at the moment, I don't keep anything like that. I notice the wins and I recognize them and I quietly celebrate them, but then I move straight on to the next thing without ever writing it down. And I think that's exactly why doubt finds it so easy to creep back in. There's no record to argue with. And in those moments of worry and anxiety, you forget about the good things and it's harder to find them. So that's the one thing I think I'm actually really going to start from now on, is a little note on my phone, every small thing. And not for anyone else, just for the days when the doubt gets really loud for me and I need my own evidence to read back. The last thing Vithyaa said that I reckon was probably the best advice is follow your instinct and have faith in what you want to do. Be brave, back yourself, because what if you can do it? What if it works? What if this is what you are meant to be doing? Thank you for being here for this one. Both parts of the full conversation with Vithyaa are on Jules FM, and the links will be below in the show note. Until next time, what if?